And today's challenge starts inside the car for a change. Today we're going to make our Mini R56 2013 Mini Cooper hardtop sound better. No, I'm not going to do a muffler delete. I'm going to work on the speakers. Now basically, great cars. Minis are great cars. The R56 is amazing. But I got to tell you, the basic sound system that comes in this car is minimal at best. They really built it to a particular price point, and the basic configuration of the car isn't bad. And you got your higher end drivers up here, kind of blocked by the knee, but still high enough that it's going to sound reasonably good. The low frequency driver down here, where it should be just fine. Neither one are huge. But I got to tell you, both of them are just paper cone speaker drivers, which just don't have a lot going for them. They really cheaped out on the speakers in this car. It's time to upgrade them. There are 6x9s in the back. I don't know if you can see inside that. It's a better speaker. I think it probably adds a little bass from the perspective of the front seats, but they don't really do much. So here's a little philosophy, folks. Short of replacing the entire radio system in this thing, which you don't want to do, really by far the biggest bang you're going to get for your bucks in making one of these sound better is replacing the speakers. And that goes for just about any car. That's where you're turning electricity into movement, and that's where it's most difficult and where a few extra bucks will go much, much, much further. Now, if you want to make it into an internal disco machine in here, you're going to have to spend money. You're going to have to give up what little bit of luggage room you have to put in a subwoofer. You're going to have to put amps. It's just going to get complicated. You don't want to do that unless you really need it. But otherwise, if you just want to make it sound better, cleaner, crisper, do what I do. Watch this video. You're going to be, I think, amazed at the outcome. I'm going to do some quantitative measurements at the end so you can actually see the improvement rather than just trusting my my tin or golden ear, as the case may be, to give you the input. So let's get started on this thing and get it sounding better. Okay, I looked high and low, and what I decided on was a set of speakers from Rockville. I've got no connection with Rockville. They're not giving me anything, so I can do this. This is just this is what I chose based on the specs I could find. I like the way these guys do specs. They don't try to blow smoke. They just basically have very reasonable real-world information, which I do appreciate. These are the low-frequency drivers that go down below 6.5 inch. This is a 3.5 inch three-way up top to fill in the highs. I think we should get a great result. All right, our testing is going to involve using a white noise generator. I'm going to use an old phone to do that. It's going to be jacked into the aux port for the best connection. It's going to be turned up as high as it'll go. That's going to give us a baseline. Basically, white noise is basically a combination of all the frequencies across the whole audio spectrum, from the ultra bass to the incredible high 20,000 cycles per second high end. You're going to be able to see the difference between the old system and the new system whenever I get it installed. And so to do that, I'm going to put the left side in first, and then compare left to right, so it'll be apples to apples. I'm going to mount a phone-based spectrum analyzer here in the center so you can actually see the output before and after, which should be interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is set it up and make sure that it's balanced so that it's hearing the left speaker the same as it is the right speaker. Okay, here's my setup. You can see it's pretty sensitive. That's my spectrum analyzer, and you can see the frequencies. It's 10 hertz on that leftmost increment, 10,000 on the rightmost. I'm going to actually be using, I believe it's orange noise, because it's got more low frequency component, a little more representative of what you would have coming through your car stereo when you're doing music. So let me turn on the noise generator on orange noise. Okay, you can see fairly flat distribution. Obviously a big drop off at the 20,000 hertz level over to the right. See if I can get my finger in there, right about there. You can see not a whole lot of low end. Down below 100 hertz it drops off pretty rapidly, which I would expect, and I'm sure it's going to do that after I do the installation to a point. But I'll be able to pan this back and forth and make sure it's about the same level from the left speaker and the right speaker, which will give me my baseline. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, I've selected the tone option. Going to go down to the balance, select that, and go to the right, and then go to the left. That's left. That's right. Left. Right. And you can see it's pretty much the same. I'm getting the same sound level out of both of them. So I'm going to go ahead and install the left speakers and see if that remains the same. And to get access to these speakers, you have to take this outer U-shaped panel off the door. About the only tricky thing is there's a little plastic pin here that has to be pried out, so that will allow getting this ring off, which has to come off. We're also going to be taking this little cover off the high frequency speaker here as well. And on this side it's got a the mirror control, which also has to be dealt with. So let's get started on that. Okay, gonna pry out this little plastic pin, and then they tend not to be too awful tight. This one came off pretty easy, and once you got that off, you can either take this off now, or when you take the door panel off, it'll just kind of automatically pop off. So quite honestly, I do it that way most of the time, but let's go ahead and pry it out just to be okay. This door panel just held on with the typical little pins, and it's just a matter of getting your pry tool in there and getting the first one popped loose. And once that happens, then the rest of them should be pretty easy. Just work your way around the outside. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There is a light in here, and you can wait until now to pull the plug, or you can actually pull the light out the bottom and unplug it before you do the panel. Either one works fine. So let's just get under it. It should lift out pretty easy. You don't really have to get under it so much, and you got to wiggle it out that way. There's this big lump on top that you got to clear the hole, and after that, it's just a matter of releasing the two little plugs here. There you go, and it'll be the same on this one. Okay, that's out of our way. Now we just get this piece of trim out, and we should be golden. We'll have access to both of the speakers. There we go. It comes out very easy. All right, you can see what we're dealing with here, and why we really need new speakers. These are just not, folks, if you're looking for hi-fi, this is not where you're going. So both of these are going to come out. The new ones are just slightly different configuration because for some reason car manufacturers want to make them odd so that you feel like you have to rush out and buy the same speakers from the same manufacturer. That ain't true. So let's get these out and start getting serious about this. Okay, the top speaker I believe is a T27, holding it in. So just a matter of spinning them out. And basically, you just force this one out. There is a little tab that holds it in place that I believe is released down in this little notch, which I'm not showing you here, right about there. It doesn't really matter because the new speaker will not have this kind of connector on it, so this is going to get cut off anyway. But if you're careful, you end up with a speaker you can sell to some other poor mini owner. Okay, happily the top speaker, the bottom speaker rather, has got a couple little obvious tabs. Push them in, pops right out, but again, that's not going to match the new one. But go ahead and spin out the 4 screws holding this one in. Okay, you can see the difference in the drivers. Here's the new. There's the old. So the new is on the left, the right is the original OEM speakers, and you can see the difference in the magnet structure. And with speakers, folks, size matters. It really does. The amount of magnetism you have from the fixed magnet makes the speaker more powerful, more efficient, which is what really matters here. And just to give you an idea, let's take a look. The old speaker weighs 1 pound, 0.2 ounces. New speaker, I can tell you, is quite a bit heavier. Comes in at almost 5 pounds. Okay, so that's quite a difference. And the old speaker for the high end, we're looking at 11.6 ounces, and the new one is just slightly heavier at 13.8. But more importantly, it's got the high-end drivers here. This is going to make a huge difference in the clarity. Now, a couple other differences that we're going to be dealing with today. One is obviously it doesn't take the pre-wired plug like the old one, so we're going to just have to wire into these just standard spade lug connections. The other issue is that you see that this has to go into the door, and if you can look at this one, you can just get the idea that this frame is a little smaller on this speaker, so I'm going to have to do a little hogging out of the mount to make this one fit. That's very common whenever you're doing a custom installation like this one. So luckily the thing that's in the way is just plastic, so we're going to be able to make that work. Okay, and luckily the new speaker comes with a template that tells you what the diameters are for the actual, for the overall diameter of the speaker, and more importantly, the cutout diameter, which in this case is 5.8 inches. So let's go compare that to the size of the hole we're working with. You can see from my little ruler here, the 147 millimeters is a little easier to work with, but you can see we're just a little bit short. So I am going to have to remove material from around the periphery here. It could be I don't have to remove it evenly, but I think that's my plan. I'm just going to go ahead and grind this out just a little bit. I might lose this entire inner lip, which probably won't matter. I probably can just chamfer it, actually, just put an angle on it to get the clearance I need. So I think I'm going to be using I think I'll use basically a sanding disc in a drill to do this, just so I can control the process a little more than if I used an angle grinder. And here's why I think I can get away with that. If you notice, this is the part that's interfering, and you can see how it's tapered out. So if I put that same taper on the inside, should be good to go. Okay, you can see still got a little rocking going on here. Rocking's good when you're talking sound system, but not this kind. So got to take just a little bit more off. And I suggest going slow, because better to take just enough off than too much. So, okay, and there we go, folks. It's feeling nice and snug. It's in there. It's not going anywhere. That's actually really good. So, again, I didn't have to take a huge amount of material off. I haven't cleaned it up yet, but that's my next step. I'll go ahead and get all this plastic off the door and vacuumed out so that it's not floating around inside the car for the next 10 years, and we'll get this thing mounted. And then we'll also deal with getting it connected, which there's a few tricks involved. This, I can see right now, this cable that they've given us from the factory is going to be kind of short, so I'm going to have to add on to it at some level just so I have enough to play with to get it connected. I could probably make that work, but I'm going to add wire to this just to make it easier on me. Okay, one of the things we got to figure out is which one of these cables is positive and which one is negative. Now, I would kind of go with the assumption that the red one is positive, but you know, the other one's got a light color on it too, so who knows? I'll show you a way that you can figure this out, even if there's no factory manual to refer to. All right, and here we've got plain old 9-volt battery. I've got the negative, which is the big one, terminal hooked up to one of the speaker connections, which by the way I could do in here too, it's just harder to reach. And then I can make the connection to the speaker by, can you hear that? That's the sound of the speaker moving. Now watch closely, watch the cone, and you can see that this configuration is pushing the cone forward, okay? So what that tells me, this is the positive connection, and whenever I attach positive to this side, the cone moves forward. So this is the positive connection. So in the same way, that means that this is also the positive connection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to write a plus on the, which you couldn't see, I'm going to write a plus on the terminal there and then go in and check it against my connector so I can identify which of the wires is positive. All right, now I've plugged it in just loosely, and you can see that indeed the red stripe cable goes to the positive terminal. So we've identified that. Now we've got to do the mid-range. It's a little tougher because you can't really get to the pins to make the connection. So I've gone ahead and removed the connector so I can connect to the speaker in its native format through the plug, and I'll be putting spade lugs on this to connect to the new speaker anyway. So no harm done. Okay, and here we have two bluish cables. One of them's got a brown stripe, one of them's got a white stripe. So I'm going to connect to these, and again you can see that connecting the positive to the white stripe wire causes the speaker cone to extend forward. So my white is my positive. So I'm going to go mark that on the door panel so I don't forget. And there you go, that ought to do it. All right, so luckily I had a speaker wiring harness from something else, some speakers I didn't use the connectors for. So I'm going to cut this off. I'm going to solder and heat shrink to do it right. You can use crimp connectors. I don't like them, but they generally work. And I got to get the wire inside the speaker to connect to, inside the door frame rather, to connect to the speaker. So I could drill a hole through here, but I realized there's a rubber feed through right next door. So I'm just going to cut a little slot in that, and I'm going to go ahead and connect my wires outside, get them all prepped, got my soldering iron heating up, and I'll just stick them through and connect them in the back whenever I'm ready to do that. So, okay, I've got heat shrink over the wires. I put black on the one that's going to be the ground. I actually went so far as to color some red on the one that's going to be hot. I remember that is from the red wire in the car, so I'm going to twist these two together. Bring in my soldering iron, get them glued together. All right. And I'm going to slide the heat shrink up over that and apply the edge of the soldering iron to that to shrink it down. And there's a connection that you're never, ever going to have to worry about. That's going to be as good as the original factory connection. Now I just have to do the same for the negative side. Okay, there they are, both ready to go. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to cut a little slot in this rubber feed through here that'll allow me to pass the spade lugs through. And might actually have to pull it out to get everything in place, but let's go ahead and feed these through. There it is, plenty of room, and the way it's wired there, it really won't have room to get in the way of anything. It won't be banging up against any of the outside surfaces. Just to make sure, I'm going to put a couple pieces of tape around here just to serve as sound deadening, so that there's no chance that this will cause a rattle. Okay, next I'm wiggling the speaker around a little bit to get to 4 spaces, make sure that all 4 holes are lined up with fairly solid bits of plastic. And then I'm going to drill little tiny holes for pilot holes for the actual speaker mounting screws. Okay, now I've rotated it so that I got fat plastic all around. I'm going to try to drill center on all 4 holes while holding it in place without letting it move at all. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the speaker out of the way. Okay, the next step is to thread in the hardware you're going to be using into the existing holes. The hardware that was holding the original speakers in just isn't going to work for these. It just doesn't work with the speaker frame. And again, that's pretty typical. You're going to have to improvise, and fortunately I've got a little assortment of screws that I bought for a few bucks at my local dollar store that'll do just fine. And you don't want to drill these holes out too big to start with, so you have plenty of material for these screws to bite into to get a good purchase, to make sure your speakers stay put for the duration. So again, thread all 4 of them so that we're ready to install the speaker next time we touch it. Okay, it's time to install the speaker. And one of the things I learned the hard way was that this lip corresponds exactly to the connectors if you put the speaker in with the logo facing the right direction. So there's interference here. Basically, there's nothing up here that's in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip the speaker around 180 degrees, connect the wires again, positive to positive. Make sure it's nice and snug. Negative to negative. All right, slide it in this way. Luckily, it is a little snug, folks. So, okay, let me get it screwed in, and we'll start over. Okay, we're back in upside down. Okay, for this one, a couple other little things in play, just minor details, but there are different size lugs on here. I don't really have a crimp on. I was just going to crimp new lugs on here, but this has a very typical, it's a small lug on the negative side, a larger lug on the positive. You can see, strangely, they've put a black stripe on the positive, so I need to match up the black stripe with the white stripe over here so that my polarity stays correct. And I'm going to do the same preparation for these cables here that I did for the other, but obviously I don't need a lot of extra length here at all. So I'm just going to cut them off fairly short here and solder and heat shrink these into place. I won't make you watch. Okay, there it is, ready to plug into the new speaker. This one, the speaker's very different. So it's actually designed to go in this way. Now you can see this has got very different mounting than the old speaker. Ideally, it would go in just like that with the tiny little tweeter up on top. I can rotate it just a little bit to the left, and I think get the clearance I need. Actually, that might be better because that rotates it back away from the steering wheel a little bit. Again, I'm going to drill 2 little pilot holes and screw it into place right there. And I'm going to go as far inboard as I can here. And do the same down here. And I neglected to show the foam I put around the outside of the speaker. There was a tiny air gap there. I don't really think it's going to make a big difference, but filled it with foam, should be fine. Okay, fully operational again. Time to put the door panel back on, which is the reverse of taking it off. Got my system set up. I'm going center. I turned the fader all the way to the front, which I should have done before. But now we're listening to just the front speakers. I'm going to level set the bass and the treble. And the treble's pretty close there anyway. Let's just call that good. And call that good. Go down to the balance. I'm going to select the center, and then I'm going to start the orange noise. It's going to get noisy, and I'm going to turn on my spectrum analyzer here so we can see what the difference is. Okay, let me reset the peak hold. And now it's just my voice doing it. So let's turn on the orange noise and see what happens. Oh my, that's different. Okay, let's go up to the balance. Let's go to the right. It sounds very different. This is the 10K line right here, the vertical, and you can see it dropping off like a rock here. There's really not much there. It's all around the -40 level. Now I'm going to go to the left. Okay, now I've gone entirely to the left. Everything's pretty much the same. You see it's actually up above the 40 pretty much, but I've actually got considerably more high end out here on the right side, and you can hear the difference, even with this crappy phone. That's night and day, folks. Okay, clearly a lot more high frequencies coming out of the left. It doesn't seem to be a huge difference in bass, but I can tell that just from that test, the bass coming out of the big speaker over here is hollow and kind of echoey. This one's very tight. Okay, folks, I did a real life, real music test through the Bluetooth, and it's night and day. That's really the only word for it. Basically, I turned up the bass, I turned up the volume. The original speakers over here just sounded hollow and rattly, and really at the volume I was listening to them, which wasn't horribly high, really didn't carry it, but this side was just sounded awesome. So again, not a huge bass boost. I was expecting possibly more of that, but I'm very happy with the way that sounds. All right, there's the peak hold that I got from running it up on a rock song that has a lot of bass in it. You can see that basically it starts pretty strong at 50 hertz, goes right up way past 10K over to the right. Yeah, so all in all, this is a huge, and I gotta tell you, the sound is more impressive than the graph, honestly, folks. It's got some kick now. It's not loose and hollow. It doesn't sound like a cheap system anymore. I'm really, really happy for the relatively low bucks I put into this with the kind of output I got. So I'd call it job well done.